You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Pegada el Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Sorry, we're a bit late this morning. Kevin and I actually got caught up in a conversation about hockey, so we're living up to our stereotypes.
Duane, I'm telling you, I heard 22 people say last night when I was working that we were a good soccer show. I'm telling you, like 8 witnesses can confirm that that's the case.
Well, that's good. That's good. So they don't want to hear my take on the Montreal Canadiens captain controversy right now?
Yeah. Hey, Nathan Beaulieu's getting shopped around too. Crisis in Montreal. Crisis in the Alouettes. At least there's the impact above a red line, which we're not used to seeing in Montreal this year.
Fair enough. One last question of this. I asked Kevin this a couple times, and I'm just going to ask the viewers. Can someone pinpoint to me the exact moment that the Montreal Canadiens organization became the same as the Leafs?
Yeah.
When did they become the Leafs East? When did that happen, Kevin?
24 Stanley Cups.
All right, yeah. None in 20 years. So there you go.
Soccer today, Duane. Let's talk about Europa League. A lot of things happen in the world of soccer in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and look, we're avoiding the conversation today that is engulfing social media, but we will address it quickly here in the first block in the next 10 minutes or so. Might as well jump in now. Megan Rapinoe, she kneeled during the national anthem during a national team game yesterday, a 9-0 win over Thailand. I do have questions of why the hell the U.S. women are playing Thailand in friendlies, but at any rate, 9-1, nothing to win there, so there's nothing to really talk about in terms of the actual game, so everyone's focused on this controversy around her kneeling. And we addressed this briefly last week when we talked about the situation of the Washington Spirit, his ownership there, some of the controversy that came back from that. I guess we have to address it again because the U.S. Federation weighed in, and then they made a statement following this, Kevin. I'll just really paraphrase it here. They basically said it's expected that our players and coaches will stand and honor the flag when the national anthem is played. That was the final statement of this. And they also said earlier on in the statement, you can read it all, it's all over the place, the playing of the national anthem provides an opportunity for our men's and women's players and coaches to reflect on the rights and privileges that we all appreciate. Now, this has, of course, led to many people pointing out that it's a bit myopic, I guess, to make a statement like that when Megan Rapinoe is, in fact, standing up because she believes, or not standing up, I guess is the case maybe. She's kneeling because she believes that her rights and freedoms aren't being respected. She doesn't share the same rights and privileges as others. Kevin, I don't know where to go with this. I'm clear on my beliefs. Everyone who follows me knows I'm a pinko Canadian, so you know where I stand in this. I don't want to belabor that part of it.
Well, there's one part of it that I don't know how to handle, and I'll make it clear here. It's the idea of using an anthem or that type of moment to express a message politically. Usually it's a political message. In this case, or the Kaepernick case with the 49ers in the NFL, it's like a political statement in a way, because you're standing up for what you believe in, for a cause that you feel you're different, that you're not the mainstream, that you're not represented enough. So in that stand, I don't know how I feel about using a national anthem and that area of a sports game or any other areas, like, because they're publicized. So when you want to make a stand, you want people to see it, to talk about it. And Rapinoe doing this on the WSL game got some coverage in our circle. Doing it yesterday in the national team game, it got coverage in all circles. So there is that aspect that we're talking about it right now. So in a way, she achieved what she was doing. And there is the aspect of the respect of the flag, of the national anthem, of the actual soccer program, especially if they talked to you about it before. But it just raises the question of, maybe you are doing the right thing if actually is making a few people angry, because that's how the way the world works. When you rustle feathers, when you have a principles, you rustle a little bit of feathers to get your point across, because you make a stand, and if it comes easily, then it wasn't really a point to make. So there's that aspect to it, and I don't know how I feel about, because there's the patriotic aspect to it. I just put myself in the Canadian shoes. Would I would be really mad if somebody kneels to the national anthem? Like, honestly, myself, no, because there's a reason, and that's the reason you have to look at and to understand why they're doing it. And I guess that's where I stand. I guess that talking about it is maybe choosing the venue that she did, venue as the moment to do it when a lot of people are watching. Well, it kind of brings the point to reality. Look, before nobody cared. Now I do this and you all care. That's exactly what she's complaining about.
Yeah, no. When you're talking about social justice protests, and for the sake of this conversation, if you're listening and you disagree with her actions, just try and bear with me here in terms of understanding that's what she's doing. Whether or not you feel that the cause is just or not is your own choice and thought exercise, right?
Yeah, that's why I didn't even mention the cause, because I just want to make it. We'll mention it in a second, but to illustrate both our point, it's unnecessary.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was kind of going there. And one of the things that I think that this is getting, the lines are getting blurred here a little bit, is the sense that no one's really talking about the cause. It's just really about anthems and about respect and about patriotism and all this sort of stuff. And no one's really talking about, especially in the Kaepernick situation, Rapinoe is in fact sort of, there's a gay and lesbian aspect to that. She's a gay woman, as most would know, that's coming through, but also she's in support of Kaepernick. And it's not really clear to me, like, whether she's ever had an opportunity to fully express her position on this, or to give details on why she feels this way, other than she feels the support in her heart, and that's fine too. But I don't think that we've really, because of the nature of the way that the media works right now and the nature of the way that this protest is happening across the United States, I don't know whether we're having the dialogue. And that's my only question to the people. I fully respect their right to protest. I do believe ultimately that they're going to be on the right side of history, particularly when it comes to violence against the African-American population by certain police officers. And I say that as the son of a police officer, just so you don't think that I'm just completely out to lunch on that. If you're listening and disagree with me, that I think that they are going to be on the right side of history, but that's not the point I'm making right now. It's that no one's having these conversations. No one is listening. There's no dialogue happening. And that's a reflection of the current toxicity in the United States, where people can't disagree anymore. That's not allowed. There's not allowed to have conversations or debates. It's just about yelling at each other.
Not just that, but you're not allowed to make some waves. You're not allowed to be different in a way that people won't agree with. So you know what? I kind of agree with Megan Rapinoe and the Kaepernick of this world. Sometimes it's not pretty, and it's never pretty. When things need to change and somebody make a stand for it, it's never pretty, but it gets prettier after.
Yeah, the Veterans for Kaepernick hashtag that came out on Twitter a couple weeks ago, I think summed it up best. These are, because a lot of the people that first spoke out against it said that he was disrespecting the military, and that's a bizarre sort of disconnect and connection of dots, because the national anthem isn't a military song. It was maybe in the U.S. case, it's about a military action, but nonetheless, it's not like the military song. It's everyone's song in the United States, right? And so the fact that they somehow connected to that shows you how skewed it's kind of become. And there's a great argument to be made out there. It's a left-wing argument that it's like, they talk about not bringing politics into this, but the very militarization of sport is, in fact, someone bringing politics into it. They're creating that kind of atmosphere. They're putting that kind of attitude forward, that this is the right way to go. That is, in fact, a political statement onto itself. So, I don't know. It makes people uncomfortable, and that's the nature of social protest. Is you're supposed to make people uncomfortable, and if you can argue. So go ahead, Kevin.
If they're uncomfortable, maybe because they know that deep down there's something to be uncomfortable about, and that's why they're kneeling. It's because they feel uncomfortable in their daily lives, either regarding an issue that they do take deeply and care a lot about, like Kaepernick, or have like cousins, like Dwayne Wade's cousin gets shot, or a lot of violence. And we're not just talking about here. I'm not talking about just police violence. A lot of violence in general in many American cities with young African-American kids. And we've seen the response by professional athletes. And it's not just Kaepernick, it's spreading. And Megan Rapinoe, in her own skin, doesn't feel comfortable with the way she was treated many times by either soccer federations, soccer associations, fans, support, country, whatever the case may be. She doesn't feel at ease, and she feels like she needs to speak up. And who are we to say no?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not anyone to say no. And I guess that everyone has the ability and the right. That's the rights and freedoms they're talking about, is the right to speak out and to speak your mind. And that's the type of stuff that they have fought for, and that does make the United States a great place in terms of the founding fathers' visions and all that sort of stuff, which is one of the, the greatest sort of dreams that have ever happened in the world in the history of mankind, of humankind, I should say. Is the creation of the United States and the rights and freedoms and individual liberties and all that sort of stuff. Whether that's still going on or not, it's a debate for you folks to have down there. That's another debate.
I'm actually, if you were Joe Rogan podcast from yesterday with Dan Carlin speaks about that fact, and it's quite fascinating. So for all the American listeners out there, if you want to hear about the founding fathers, how they imagined the country, and how in hindsight, how this evolved over 300 years. Yeah, we're talking about it's still a very young country. But if you're looking at the issue and as a whole, there's no bad answers. But what gets me, what irritates me, Duane, and I think you feel the same way, but I'll let you speak because I don't want to talk to you for you. I do want to talk to you. I don't want to talk for you. You have an issue. And when you have an issue and you feel that you have a platform that if you do something about it, people will talk about it, you kind of have you're obligated to do it. It's deep down, and that's what's in the Constitution. So for Megan Rapinoe to make a stand, I have to agree with her stand, not because she now didn't bring the anthem, but because she feels strongly enough about an issue that she feels the need to do this. And that, in a way, deserves for us to talk more about the issue itself that she doesn't feel at ease with than the allegedly disrespecting of the anthem or the flag, which is not the case. If you go back in history, this is how you protest during a national anthem. It has been shown since the 80s in the Olympic to today.
All right. In the sake of balance, I do want to read one sort of dissenting view here to Rapinoe and the actions she's taking. This is a tweet that came. I put a poll out this morning just to ask where my followers kind of were on this issue. And for the record, it was it's 71% say that she's mostly right and 29% say she's mostly wrong, which doesn't surprise me. I would have guessed that those results would have came through. But there's one person that sort of responded that I'm going to read. This is Phil is his name. Phil tweeted to me, "People kneeling for the anthem is fine. It's their right. I get confused when those protesters play for a national team, though." That is an interesting thought exercise there, too. If you're protesting the United States, should you then represent them? Is that then weakening
That's a fair point
in some way?
To be quite fair, it's a fair point. There's probably one thing more that she could do that would bring more attention than kneeling during the anthem, is publicly refusing a call-up with the national team and explaining why.
Yeah, and it's complicated a bit in the women's case because a lot of their income is dependent on playing because they're paid on bonuses. They're paid salary, but they're paid bonuses as well. So it's it does speak to sort of their ability to make an income as well. So it's complicated itself that way. But nonetheless, it is a topic that's probably not going away anytime soon. But hopefully we can have a soccer show after this. But nonetheless, it needed to have the conversation, and we did. So let's take a break now, Kevin. Come back, and we're going to talk about Guatemala and more politics.
Yeah, politics.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Hey, we're back. Another story that's politically sort of tied in a little. It's not going to be as controversial over here. Is the Guatemalan Federation, Kevin, has been suspended by FIFA, and it's because of this infamous, I'll call it, rule that they have where they won't allow third parties to make decisions for them. That basically FIFA has to dedicate or has to punish or not punish federations for the actions that take place. And what happens specifically is that a court down there has suspended its own federation or a part of its own federation for its act in unfairly suspending 3 players for a doping violation. So that's what's happening down there. But it does beg the question, what this FIFA thing with the third parties, like, is it right that they do that? Is there any justification to that, or are they just being arrogant FIFA for not accepting any outside opinion, Kevin?
Well, they feel only them know how their world works. But unfortunately, or fortunately, the world of soccer is so big that it's basically the entire world. So in a way, it goes back to the issue. Do regular court have something to say for regular sport? And precedent has been set. We're talking about the Tribunal Arbitral du Sport in Lausanne and other instances of regular civil law court making a judgment when one party feels he has been wrong and feels like there's a litigious situation there and takes action. We've seen it in the world of cycling just before the Olympic in Canada, where Joëlle Numéville, a cyclist from Quebec, was denied access to the national team because of she trains differently. She didn't necessarily meet the same type of level of team chemistry with the other riders, and Cycling Canada felt like they wanted other riders. She thought she was being persecuted or unfairly treated. She tried to go to the court side. It didn't go through because of time and a different aspect. But it goes back to the issue: do courts have something to say in sports? And sometimes, with human beings being human beings, there's laws being broken in sports, and there's corruption, and there's all that aspect of sports that we've seen courts go in and make rulings. So, is FIFA need to come to 2016 and realize that, look, you're not controlling the whole situation. Stop telling yourself this, and you kind of have to let courts do what courts do.
Yeah, look, I hear you for the most part. I'll be a bit of devil's advocate, and I do kind of understand where they're coming from with that rule, in the sense that there are some unique situations within the world of sports governance that maybe a precise civilian court doesn't necessarily grasp in the same way that a sport-specific court would, and the arbitration court for sport that you mentioned, it is set up to do that, and that is a court that FIFA does direct its players to go through its own internal process and go there. And there are other industries, other fields where there's internal stuff that you go through before you go outside, and it's not that unique that an organizing body, a governing body, a business even would encourage and try and enforce the idea that you should go through internal processes to grieve rather than go immediately to the outside. It is a bit strange to me how heavy-handed FIFA gets with this, though, how they're going to outright suspend a game and the ability to compete internationally. And this does have we'll get this in a minute, but it does have a very specific and immediate sort of impact on a Guatemalan club team that's competing in the CCL right now. Well, I might as well say it. They're in the Red Bulls group. As it stands right now, unless this is resolved before they play that final game of the group stage, the Red Bulls are going to get a walkover and a 3-0 win, and they will advance because of that. Whereas, if it does get resolved, they'll have to make that trip down there and, have to deal with that. They'll have to get the win.
And win 3-0, but they'll have to actually play the game to get those 3 goals.
Yeah, well, that does have a trickle-down effect across the league too, because you're taking a big trip that would have handicapped. You're gonna have to handicap that in you're evaluating the Eastern Conference race. So, like, I imagine teams like Toronto and Philadelphia and the other New York team are going to be like, yeah, why they should have to fly down there anyway.
They should fly down there and go train for 2 days.
Just come back. Maybe they'll want that, but no, it does have a direct on the field impact there. And of course, Guatemala is at a World Cup qualified at this point, so it won't affect it that way. But it would need to be resolved before them.
Too bad they're not in the hex, because that would have been fun. Guess what? Maybe, Canada would not have been chosen, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't think we would have got the choice. I don't know who would have been, but Jamaica probably highest ranked team that didn't make it.
What is the expression? The end justify the means. I just want to go back there.
We're in by default. We're in
My
by
2
default.
favorite words in the English dictionary. Default.
There you go. So it does have an effect that way. But look, originally the idea behind this is to sort of avoid corruption, which is ironic because when you look at FIFA and what's happened with there, it's hardly avoiding corruption to have them deal with themselves. But you go into a small country, maybe the courts are sometimes not necessarily as independent as you'd want them to be. I'm not pinpointing Guatemala in this particular case, but just in general in world history, there's examples of that.
Well, just in the world of soccer, FIFA, corruption, Jack Warner, the other guys, just that.
Yeah. So to avoid to not listen to third parties is something that that certainly you can understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, someone needs to who's policing them, and that's exactly the problem we're getting into right now. Like, who are they to say?
The watchman?
Who's watching FIFA? Because obviously we have some pretty prime examples.
Duane, it's probably a relic of the time where, hopefully that time is resolved, where you have a lot of friends in high places, you do a lot of things, and you want to make sure that nobody else comes in your business and see stuff, so you keep everybody out. It's maybe a relic of that, and that's why they always went aggressively with this, because like if we open that Pandora's box, they'll find stuff, and that's not what we want.
Well, yeah, and it's basically FIFA has been, who governs FIFA? The answer is, Andrew Jennings, basically. It's like journalists that have fought the fight for years and years and years to peel back those layers so that people see what's going on in there. And Andrew Jennings is an old man now living on his farm, right? Like, it took him a career to basically take down some of the highest ranking officials at the IOC and at FIFA, and he's done a wonderful job at that. I can't imagine how cynical that job has made him. I suspect he's not particularly a sports fan anymore, if he ever was. So nonetheless, it's an ugly job that he took on himself, but it took years. I mean, the books that he wrote, I'm looking at the Secret World of FIFA here, right beside me here. It was written, I think, 15 years ago or something like that. So that's how long it took to take it down without having that third party, that government ability to step in and oversee them. And I'm not too sure what the answer is, though, because I also, as I said, I do see why you want to avoid sort of petty regionalism kind of coming in and affecting these decisions too. Like, you've got to have some kind of overseeing here nonetheless. But here we are. It's an interesting thought exercise is this, though. And, it's easy to suspend Guatemala, and Zimbabwe is also in trouble in there too, if you look. And remember, I think most of our listeners well remember this, back when the U.S. women were some of the world's women were taking the Canadian Federation and FIFA to the tribunal, the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal here. That is a third party. That we said that at the time. We talked about it, is that if the U.S. players were successful in that, what would FIFA do? And it never went there. And I always felt that was something that was hanging over that case that probably meant that it wasn't going to go to the tribunal, because had the tribunal come down, FIFA, if it was consistent in how it enforced itself over the years, it really wouldn't have had a choice but to suspend the U.S. Federation in that case. And I don't think they would have, though.
And it would have been the U.S. Federation as a whole, Duane, too. It would have been the men's as well.
Yeah, men and the youth teams and,
wow.
and the MLS.
And the MLS teams. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, they would have not done it. It's easy to say it now, but I don't know.
It's like I said, it's an interesting thought exercise, and it's a cynical thought exercise, because, as we said, I don't think that they would have followed through on that, which sort of speaks to something ominous about FIFA too, is that they like to play the big bad bully when they can get away with it. But
it's easy to bully somebody that's smaller than you. But when you start to bully somebody that's your own size, you gotta get ready for a fight.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I think we've exhausted this one a little bit. A couple quick points here. They're not in the lineup, but we can handle these pretty well. Yesterday, if you want to listen back, we have the entire Benito Floro press conference from yesterday there. Kevin and I talked a little bit. The one thing Kevin and I didn't talk about was what we thought the next coach of Canada should look like. We kind of ran out of time there, Kevin. So why don't we explore that in the time remaining in this block? What do you think the next coach should do? What should they be looking for in Canada?
I think we're one coach away from having the coach of our dreams with this team. What I'm saying is we're one coach cycle, 4 to 8 years away from having a coach that's going to be there for 16, 20 years. Maybe we can have the Sir Alex Ferguson of Canada, finding a way to have somebody that wants to coach this team and wants to raise the level of this program and is bookmarked. Like, there's one example and one candidate, and not just
about a guy that's in San Francisco right now.
Well, yes, we're all thinking about the same guy. We all have the same idea, and that's because of things that he mentioned to me and to other journalists in the past when asked about the national team question. It is something in his career path. It is something at the top of his career path. He has other things he wants to do. He's going to start the San Francisco Deltas next year. He wants to do great there as well. But he does have Chelsea in the Premier League and things like this in his agenda. But maybe more realistically, or not, I don't want to say realistically, because I do believe in dreaming big. You just have to work big to achieve those big dreams. But if you do think about the Canadian national team and a Mark Dos Santos, maybe we're one coach away from him taking the reins of the team that he really wants to coach and bring this country, his country, forward in a way that we haven't seen before. That's what he talked about in the past, and he didn't feel that it was the right time. And maybe not now is not the right time, but maybe in 4 to 6 to 2 years, maybe then it will be the right time.
Yeah, look, I mean, when the Floro decision came down in official, there was kind of an undercurrent. And if you run in Canadian soccer circles, this was pretty clear that what was happening here is there were a lot of people that were starting to lobby a little bit for Canadian coaches to be considered for this position. And sometimes that lobbying was sort of with an eye to someone specifically, whether it be themselves or someone that they're friends with, the people that were doing the lobbying. And that was my take on it anyway. I'm going to couch this before I get into what I'm about to say. I think there's a lot of good talent, good promising coaching talent in Canada. I think that because of a lot of circumstances beyond those people's control, those talented, potentially talented coaches haven't really been given the opportunity to show what they're capable of. That's my couch. What I'm about to say is this. I don't think the national team is where they should be given that opportunity to show that. I think that they would hopefully we get this Canadian Premier League launched sooner rather than later, and that 2018 goal remains intact, and those coaches can start to get time there. And I would go so far as to say when the Canadian Premier League launches that we should perhaps even include a rule of some time that requires a Canadian coach.
If your head coach is not Canadian, at least the rest of your staff has to be or something.
Yeah, I don't want to limit them completely, but I think.
Well, what the Montreal Impact are doing, basically, there's no rule, but that's what the Impact are doing. The coaching staff is entirely, I think, outside of one, Jack Stern from England with the FC Montreal goalkeeper coach. Outside of that, it's basically all from the academy and from Mauro Biello down.
Yeah,
to the trainers, to everybody.
Here's an idea. If anyone's listening out there that is setting up these rules, why don't you include the manager, the head coach, as part of the quota? There's going to be international players in this. So if you want to have an international coach, that's going to take up one of your international slots. There's my answer.
Why not? Why not?
That's a bit creative, I think. So that would be a way to encourage them to have Canadian coaches.
But go back to, you didn't touch on Dos Santos though in the future, maybe with his future with the national team, because we're not the only ones talking about this. He is the one that started it after 2011, and even back then he was answering those type of questions that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that he's got a bright future. I'm a little concerned for him in San Francisco because I hope there's stability there, but we'll see.
Well, if there's one city and one place where you can find, because San Francisco Deltas are based with the owner almost based in Silicon Valley and tech companies with deep pockets and very big backbones. So I think the Deltas are going to be okay.
Yeah, my only concern with Dos Santos is how quickly he jumped from Fury to Swift Park Rangers to this opportunity.
Well, look, let's face it. Something happened this season in Kansas City. An opportunity maybe he thought he would have didn't. There's something that happened because the goal was not just to go to the USL for one season and then move away. There's something going on, and the people who manages Dos Santos as well have something to say in that situation.
Yeah, it's just a concern I have, but we'll see. I do obviously wish him well. He's been a guest on this show, and he's always been gracious with his time, and is a very talented young coach for sure. I don't think it should be a Canadian coach. I do think that they should look international. To finish my thought, because we are running out of time on this block, but I would look maybe to Italy or to Spain again. But I do think that maybe they might want to consider the communication aspect a little bit more. Terry Dunfield had an article in TSN today where it talked about how the communication issue wasn't just impacting media relations. It was also when he was with the national team in the early part of Floro's reign, that the players weren't understanding him too on the training pitch. So that's an issue. So I think that needs to be something that they pay attention to, that there needs to be a better ability to communicate in English and in French. But
well, at least in English, or at least French, at least in one of the two fluently.
Yeah, so that they can get by. Because I mean, surely they could be a lot easier to communicate. Most of the players have a little bit of French. Like most Canadians have a little bit of French, right? So you can probably
enough in soccer terms. Like in soccer terms, they can probably make it in 2 languages, if not 3, easily. Because when you learn to play soccer from a young age, you're exposed to French terminology, English terminology, and Spanish terminology for the most part, because of how the game is perceived internationally.
Yeah. So anyway, to finish my thought, I would again look to one of those places that produces a lot of high-end coaches, and I think they need to bring another high-end professional coach with a lot of experience. And talking to people when Floro was hired, that the amount of resumes and the quality of the resumes that they got for the job would have blown people away. Many of them were just thrown in a slush pile immediately because they just concluded they couldn't afford them. So they were names that people would recognize that were applying for this job. It's an international job, an international coaching job. There's not a lot of them out there in a country that's desirable to live in. They're going to get the opportunity to hire another high-end coach. I would hope that they find the money to do it right and to bring somebody in who can really help this program turn around, and can really, I also hopefully someone that will be willing to mentor other young Canadian coaches in that program. And exactly what you said.
Okay, so how about we shoot for the star? Okay.
Okay.
What coach over the last 10 years have won Euro and World Cups that is available right now?
I'll let you say. Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. But,
Del Bosque, why not? Go get Del Bosque.
Yeah, why not? Exactly. Well, look, as I said, I think people.
Okay,
will be
the
surprised.
language part will be fine, but I think we can make do on this one.
Yes, exactly. There will be someone out there. I'm okay with a younger coach too, as long as they have the backing, the chops. But I do think that this is they need to make this decision right, not quickly as well. And that's the last thought I have on this: is let's not rush it. Let's not worry about the next few friendlies. If they don't put this person in place till next spring, so be it. Let's just get the right
Russia?
choice.
We're not going to Russia, so
Exactly. All right, Kevin, let's take a break. We'll come back and end the show with a little bit of the games of the week and some Europa.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
Europa.
yeah. Feyenoord world beaters.
Yeah, well, United beaters anyway. That's
1-0 win in
1-0.
Rotterdam versus United. They kind of strong United, but it really felt like a 2015-2016 United plus Pogba.
Well, it's too, yeah. And you think about United right now, after a start to the season playing some weaker sides, we'll say.
Yes.
I was talking to a United fan at Blue Jays game on Monday, and even he was sort of admitting that the start of the season might have been blinded a little bit by the opposition, the 3 wins in a row. Now here we are with 2 straight losses to Feyenoord and to Manchester City. So that's
Of course,
kind
you had to say it.
Yes, well, it's relevant in this particular
Yes,
case.
it
So
is.
yeah, they are on
City actually took care of Mönchengladbach on their game. We didn't talk about it because we recorded yesterday's show, but yeah, they actually beat Mönchengladbach on Wednesday.
4-0. Yeah, Aguero hat trick, who's really blossoming under Pep. So that's an exciting time for City supporters. Bournemouth this tomorrow for them. So that's certainly exciting there. Look, when it comes to Europa League coverage, folks, I'm looking at the results from yesterday, and I'm still scrolling on my phone. Right, there's 100 million results here. Southampton beat Sparta Prague 3-0. That's an English result that a lot of people will call above Villarreal over Zurich 2-1. That's an interesting one. Ajax got a win over the team in my neighborhood here that I always pronounce wrong, so I'm not going to bother. You know, the Greek side out there.
Yeah, there's a Shakhtar Donetsk, my favorite Ukrainian team, won against Konyaspor for Shakhtar Donetsk. Sometimes in the Champions League, sometimes in Europa, they always get at least one good result a year in Europe, and it's always impressive because it's a team that doesn't have a lot of means compared to some of the teams even in Europa League today.
And the Israeli team, Shiva, beating Inter Milan 2-0 is something that has a lot of people talking as well. So there's certainly a lot of results here. I always like Victoria Pleasant. who looks like a beer to me. It's like, is that a beer of some type? But anyway, the Czech team, they beat Roma. They tied Roma 1-1, so that's an interesting result there. The great thing about the Europa League is it teaches you about the world of football, doesn't it? You learn about so many clubs. It's wonderful that way.
I learned about geography. That's what I keep telling to people I meet from around the world. I always ask them, where you're from? And what's a football team close to where you are? And they're like, I don't follow football. Like, oh, fine. But 95%, but 95% of the case, they give me a team. And I'm like, thank you. Now I know where it is, because that's how I know my geography. We've been playing FIFA games for decades now. Yeah. I know clubs from like Darlington, example, those type of club because of the FIFA game. And now I actually figure out where they're from. And that's how I know my geography in this world. Yes, because of football.
Exactly. Fun stuff there. All right, let's turn our attention to the games ahead. As I said, basically with Europa League, when it gets deeper, we'll get a little deeper into the games, but there's so many that we can't do them justice to go through them. Obviously, United result's going to be a little bit the one that's going to interest the most people here because there's a lot of United fans, and I'm not too sure how many of them are all that upset by the loss because it's the Europa League and a lot of them kind of want to bail out of the competition quickly, which is a conversation we've had here before. But
OGC Nice with Balotelli lost to Schalke. So 1-0 in Nice. So there's that didn't go well because for once Nice is in Europe this year. That's why they got Balotelli. We'll see how that unfolds as well.
Exactly. All right, let's go through the Major League Soccer games for the week, starting with tonight with Chicago and DC, which is I would have to say that I hate to use the must-win statement, but if either of these teams wants to stay, DC's in a better shape, obviously, than Chicago. Certainly, Chicago's case, they need 3 points pretty much every game out to have any chance at the playoffs at this point. But certainly, I would think both these teams are looking at this as a must-win. DC with the late comeback win last week. Chicago obviously lost to Toronto, so that one's interesting there. The Whitecaps against Seattle in the Cascadia Battle, the first game of the weekend. Again, we're in that crunch time, Kevin. This is a period in the MLS season where it's hard to look at any matchup and not go, yeah, that's huge, eh?
Especially those two teams, because both are in a situation where if they win a lot of their remaining games, maybe they'll win now. That may be asking too much, but close to it, they can get a shot at making the playoffs. But they need the point tonight. The worst thing that can happen is a draw tonight from any of those two teams. They need 3 points. So either Vancouver or Seattle are going to get closer to Portland and closer to that sixth spot that give access to the playoff. But for that, they need a victory tonight. So can Vancouver do it on the road at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 Pacific? So it's an afternoon game. Can they do it in Seattle, or will Seattle rebound and try to bridge that gap? It's not going to be easy for any of those two teams, and maybe both of those two teams have already moved on to better things. Maybe Vancouver's thinking about more the Champions League than the league. We'll see. And in Seattle's case, maybe thinking about next year. So we'll see how that game's unfold on Saturday because, well, it can be very telling for what the future has in store for the winner of Saturday's game.
Fair enough. Do you have your chainsaw ready, Impact Nation? You ready to cheer for Portland over Philadelphia this weekend?
Let's go, Portland. Come on, Rose City till we need to be. Because Portland, if they win against Philly, it gives Montreal a break. Montreal has a winnable game versus New England at home. I say winnable. We never know. Chicago came in and beat them. So for Montreal, if they get a victory against New England, they can go back now to say, look, we had a good 4-1 derby. We won on the road, even though it wasn't easy, 1-0. Then we had bad results. And then we got a draw that was felt like a victory. And now if we can beat New England at home and go back to winning at San Saputo, then they have a shot to keep that 5th position locked. If they lose to New England and if Philly win and DC wins, then the conversation becomes which one of those three is going to make the playoffs and not. If Montreal wins and DC loses and Portland wins, then Montreal is almost guaranteed to make the playoff.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on down the list here a little bit more. Saturday, the best game of Saturday, the most intriguing game of Saturday for sure. I think the most intriguing game of the week comes Sunday, and I have a personal stake in it a little bit. I play just like Kevin with the Wii with Montreal. Little known fact, Kevin is the third backup left back for the Impact, right?
Sure. Yeah, no. I mean, I wouldn't even cut it into U8 probably.
Yeah, fair enough.
They would probably literally make me fall down into holes on the pitch.
There you go. I remember when I was at Camp Nou watching the U12s play at
my
Barcelona
God.
and just having my mind blown. It was outrageous what they were doing. Anyway, NYCFC versus Dallas. That's at the venerable Yankee Stadium. That's 7 p.m. on Saturday. Dallas coming off the loss last week, but the win of the
and the signing of Carlos Ruiz.
Yeah, I know that's interesting. Last day of the window, so certainly people don't get that.
Roster
They
freeze.
always,
It was 5 p.m. last night.
yeah, they mix up the transfer window and the roster freeze. They're different dates. It's always September 15th every year. If you remember that, folks.
You're not allowed to transfer players after a transfer window, but you can sign players that are free agent anytime in the year outside of roster freeze, or you can do trades. And yesterday was a roster freeze.
Yes, exactly. So it's September. It's always September 15th. Has been forever. Anyway, so that was yesterday. So that's an interesting one too. They're coming off the win too. Well, they have a hangover for the Cup win. NYCFC still battling for top of the East. It's a big game all around. Toronto fans, I ask you this: who are you cheering for here? Would you rather New York fall back, or would you rather have that chance at that faint dream of the Shield? Would you rather keep that alive? It's an interesting.
Depends what you feel is achievable. Do you feel that gap of what's 6 points?
Five points right now.
5 points to Dallas.
5 points, game and a half.
Okay, so it could be like 4 points. So it depends what you feel about that compared to just staying top of the East. Which one is truly important? Which one is you have to go with? Make sure you stay top of the East. And if it's possible, you go for the Shield. But you have to, people are not going to like this, but it's like in a game, you have to make sure you don't concede before you want to go score a goal. In this situation, if you're Toronto, you kind of wish you were staying on top. So you get that first round bye, and you get a chance to host a home and away series at BMO Field.
Yeah, a TFC win, which is the most important thing they can do in the weekend, obviously, combined with a draw in that game, might be the best overall reaction. But I agree with you that I think that getting top two in the East is a far more important prize than winning the Shield. Although the Shield would be sort of a nice little thing after 10 years of walking in the wilderness for TFC fans. I'm sure they'd enjoy a Shield win nonetheless. It might even happen in Montreal in the second last week of the season.
Why would you say that? Why would you go there? Like, come on.
I like to watch the world burn, Kevin. I like to watch the world burn.
Yeah, you're just like that dog in the middle of that room saying, yeah, everything's fine.
All right. Exactly. I get you. The meme you're talking about there. Orlando in what would have to be described absolutely
as the worst team in the league.
Yeah, you need to get that 3 points, Lions, if you're going to make the playoffs. So we'll see how that plays out.
Columbus is the new Chicago. Did you get the memo?
Yeah, Columbus. Oh, who's worse, Columbus? I think the Crew are worse right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the Columbus is the new Chicago.
Yeah, and Houston's in there with a chance too, but I think the West.
Well, Houston, they have problems.
Yeah. Montreal, New England, we talked about already. Colorado, San Jose is the 9 o'clock game. Obviously, the Rapids, if they're going to continue their remarkable season, will want to get points against a team like San Jose. And the final game of Saturday is RSL against that Houston team that we just talked about. As you said, they have problems. You would think RSL, which is a sneaky good team this year. I don't know how it's. I predicted them to miss the playoffs.
They're a bit like Dallas because they have like bad. Dallas is better, but I mean they have like a few bad performances that maybe skewed my opinion of the team, like big losses, and that sometimes is because it's write-off game, and we forget to write it off as analysts, like journalists of this game. Is we forget that sometimes just to move on from a bad performance and it has no repercussion. I think Dallas and RSL are up for it.
Yeah, exactly. In RSL. As I said, they're sneaky good. They're sitting there in Sandy. They do what they do year in, year out. Even with the change of the management, they've still managed to keep that program churning to do it the kind of the creative way because they don't necessarily attract the biggest names down there. I've always had a lot of respect for that program, although their name still is awful. All right,
yes. Sunday, maybe Sunday, Duane, the beginning of the new Landon Donovan.
Yeah, I don't think he'll start quite yet.
No, but he might make an apparition in that game.
Yeah, I don't know whether Donovan will start at all. maybe in a desperation play, maybe if the LA has a position locked up or something and they're playing at home where they can't go up or down, maybe they'll throw him out there for the fans' sake, because Bruce Arena did show a little bit more sentimentality than we're used to with putting him out at the end of the last game, and even saying after the fact that he wanted to reward the fans for showing up. So it wouldn't shock me if he did that. But other than that, they might be viewing him as depth and a sub. Just even the threat of Landon Donovan, it might even be more dangerous to have, from the sense, or more valuable to them, is to have this idea of Landon Donovan floating around rather than debunking the idea.
So let's make sure he doesn't play, but we'll have him there like warm up and look intimidating on the sideline. Jake, look, dude, I could come in. I could come and score.
And what I think, bias aside, is the game of the week, is the final game of the week. Toronto FC versus the New York Red Bulls, battle for first in the East. I have said all year that I believe the Red Bulls to be the best team in the East. I'm not going to back off that, although I've also said all year that I think TFC, for various reasons, could very well be right there. I've never backed off from, even when they were slumping at some point, the TFC had a chance to win the East and potentially even the Shield. So I'm certainly not going to now, but this is a very intriguing matchup for a neutral. Absolutely, here in Toronto, it is. I don't want to say the most important game they've ever played, because I think every game from now on this season will be the most important game TFC has ever played in franchise history, because they are in a position for the first time ever to actually do something significant, to actually accomplish something, and they need to win to do that. So really, every week is going to feel like this is the biggest game ever. And right now, facing this one at 5:00 on Sunday, which was moved up from 7:00. If you haven't received the 6 phone calls from TFC and the 16 emails yet, TFC fans, remember it's been moved up to 5:00 from 7. This is it's a huge one. Kevin, even from an outside perspective, even from a Montreal perspective, you have to understand that it's a big game, right?
Yeah, that's why it's on Fox Sports Go, on TSN2 and MLS Live. It's because it's a big game, top of the battle for the East. So you have Toronto FC, New York Red Bulls, Jesse Marsch, Greg Vanney. It's an interesting matchup as well. Potential matchup in the playoff, depending on where those team finishes. If NYCFC goes in the middle or not, eventually they could face in the playoff. And could be interesting to see if teams maybe keeps a little bit in the back pocket, don't show all their game plans, and we'll see how that unfolds. It is going to be interesting. Javinko is not 100%. He's getting close to it. He's back from that small injury. He's been playing, but we all know there's a lot of knocks in the season. This game is going to be fascinating for those reasons.
Yeah, look, look, the last time TFC had a 4-game homestand, they won it out. That wasn't expected heading in, so it'll be interesting to see how they deal with it this time up. Now that they've done it once, the expectations in Toronto might be 12 points again. I don't know whether that's realistic, but I certainly think 10 would be. They're going to need to start on the right foot here, and if they get 10 points out of this homestand, I'll go right on the limb, and I'll say that if they can get 10 points, that they well win the East. At the very least, they'll finish in that top 2. And if you don't know the playoff format, some people might not. The top 2 teams in each conference get a bye from the first round. The first round is that single game elimination game, the wild card game, if you prefer, the play-in round. So 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5. They reseed after that, so that if the 6th place team upsets the 3rd place team, they would play the 1st place team in the next round. And then simply after they reseed, it's a bracket from there. You go 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. Winners play in the conference final. Highest seed will host the MLS Cup from final at that point, Kevin. That's how the playoffs work. So those top 2 positions are massive, because you want to avoid at all costs that single elimination game.
Yeah. Let's move to the Premier League to finish the games of the week, Duane. Tonight, Chelsea, Liverpool. Well, tonight, this afternoon, 3 p.m., Chelsea, are they for real? Can Liverpool go closer to the top 5 in the race of, it's already the title race. It's week 5, but that's the way it's going to be this year. If you falter once, you might be done. Hull City, Arsenal tomorrow, 10 a.m. There's no early game on Saturday, so West Brom, West Ham, Battle of the West, 10 a.m. We have at as well City and Bournemouth.
Yeah, that's you're trying to avoid the hangover from the big game that was pushed back a day too. So there is a day's less rest, but I even that said, it's Bournemouth, and City's pretty much firing on all cylinders right now. So you'd have to think that they're the massive favorite there. I do find the game this afternoon, and Liverpool has had they have 7 points right now. Liverpool in 6th place. They've had a tough start. They played Arsenal to start the season. They're playing Chelsea today. Certainly, they have Spurs in the next couple weeks as well. So that if they can get through that stretch, Liverpool is a fascinating team to watch this year in terms of where they can do and how far they can go. They're kind of the wild card in a lot of situations. It'd be interesting also to see how Leicester rebounds this week after, not a great start to the season in their title defense. They're hanging around the relegation zone right now, in fact. But certainly a big win on the Europa League this week.
16th.
Yeah, but 3 points out of 6. So,
yes.
Everton,
Middlesbrough to finish the games on Saturday. And on Sunday, Watford versus Man United. Will Man United rebound from their loss in the Europa League against Feyenoord? We'll see, Duane. We'll see.
Exactly. United will need a win there too. It's early days, but as you said a minute ago, you don't want to. The points in September are worth every bit the same as the points in May. So you want to gather them up when you can. And certainly, if Man City's on 12 or 15 points at the end of this year, if you have any title hopes whatsoever, United won't want to be 6 points back already, right? So they're going to need to make sure that they're taking care of their business against those teams that they should beat. As you said in the past, has been the mainstay of their success.
The last remaining games on Sunday. So we have that 7 a.m. Watford Man United, Crystal Palace Stoke at 9:15, Southampton Swansea at 9:15 as well, and the late game at 11:30 a.m. on Sunday, Tottenham Hotspurs versus Sunderland. So interesting matchup as well on Sunday.
All right, to get Jermaine Defoe against his former team, his most famous team. He's had many former teams, but his most famous team.
Half the team that we talked about today, including Toronto, are Jermaine Defoe's former teams.
That's going to do it for the week. Next week, we're going to get back. I've had some internet issues this week, which are apparently getting resolved tomorrow. Knock on wood. I'm knocking on my head right now. So hopefully that happens so that we can get back to doing a few more interviews and so on and so forth next week. I do have an interview booked to talk about the Scottish League and the Scottish situation, where Celtic stands, where Rangers stand. Obviously, Rangers is a bit of turmoil right now following the 5-1 loss in the first Old Firm derby of the new era. Rangers 7-0 against Barcelona. There's a lot to talk about in Scotland, and I know we have a lot of Scottish fans out there. I also know we have a lot of people that kind of look at the Scottish League now that are newer to the game and go, why the hell do we talk about the Scottish League? So we're going to explore that next week. I'm going to try and do that moving forward, to sort of look at one league beyond England each week, to sort of look at a little closer so that we can get the whole world involved in the conversation that we're trying to have. But until that time, Kevin, as always, I'll let you say goodbye.
Monday, 11 a.m. Soccer Today. Until then, have a great soccer.
You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.